At dawn, a cart loaded with wool is already waiting at the southern entrance to London Bridge. Mud covers its wheels. Two horses breathe clouds of white vapor in front of the narrow gateway. The driver reaches into his purse, removes a small coin, and hands it to the collector stationed at the bridgehead. Behind him wait pack horses carrying grain, livestock being driven toward market, pedestrians with baskets, and rural traders hoping to sell their goods inside the city. Below the bridge, a small boat waits for an opportunity to pass through one of the arches. People are moving above and below, and almost every form of movement has the potential to leave behind a small amount of money. From this scene, a medieval bridge appears to be an extraordinarily simple business. First, build a bridge across a river, then place a barrier at its entrance. Everyone who wants to cross must pay. A bridge does not eat. It does not require wages. It does not rot like grain or wool. As long as the road exists, the river remains, and travelers continue to arrive. The bridge appears capable of collecting money forever. But in medieval England, a bridge was not usually a private road on which an owner could impose any charge he wished. Many important bridges formed part of the public system of movement. A lord, town, or group of bridge administrators often needed royal permission before collecting a toll for construction or repair. This authorized charge was commonly known as pontage. The permission was usually temporary. In theory, the money was not intended to enrich the person controlling the crossing. It was intended to keep a damaged or unfinished bridge standing. Medieval English bridges were broadly supported through three kinds of resources: compulsory responsibility, tolls, and private charity. From the middle of the 13th century onward, many urban bridges received permission to collect pontage, but the income was generally assigned to construction and maintenance. That distinction is essential. The appearance of a money box at the bridgehead did not mean that a lord could simply take the coins for his private use. The income functioned more like a restricted fund. It had to purchase stone. It had to employ carpenters and masons. It had to replace rotten timber piles. If the administrators diverted the money elsewhere while the bridge continued to deteriorate, the result was more than a failed business. An entire road could disappear. In 1362, a bridge across the River Trent near Nottingham collapsed. King Edward III ordered an investigation into who was legally responsible for repairing it. The answer was extremely dry. No one possessed a permanent obligation. Past repairs had depended on charitable gifts and on temporary royal permissions to collect bridge tolls during the previous decades. When donations were insufficient, the toll grant expired, or administration became confused. The bridge remained in the river while responsibility belonged clearly to no one. This was the first problem the medieval bridge toll system attempted to solve. Everyone needed the bridge. Merchants needed it to move goods toward market. Farmers needed it to carry grain into town. Lords needed it for tenants, officials, and armies. Churches needed it to connect parishes and pilgrimage routes. But when a bridge required major repairs, everyone preferred someone else to pay. A bridge toll concentrated this scattered demand at one physical point. Those who used the crossing left a small contribution. A penny, halfpenny, or farthing appeared insignificant. Collected repeatedly, those coins gradually became stone blocks, timber piles, and craftsmen's wages. To understand the business properly, however, we cannot remain beside the toll box. We must enter the bridge accounts of London. During the late 12th century, London began rebuilding its Thames crossing in stone. Construction started around 1176 and continued until 1209. Once completed, the bridge concentrated overland trade between the southern bank and the city of London along one narrow passage. As traffic increased, so did tolls, rents, gifts, and other income associated with the crossing. By the 13th century, London had developed a dedicated institution to manage the bridge's property and finances, an organization that eventually became known as the Bridge House Estates. From 1282 onward, two bridge masters, elected by the citizens of London, managed the bridge's property and repairs. They were not administering an empty stone roadway. Houses and shops stood on the bridge. There were also warehouses, administrative spaces, and rental properties nearby. The bridge fund received money from tolls, charges on boats passing beneath the bridge, fines for illegal fishing, rents from buildings on the bridge, and property donated by people wishing to support its maintenance. This transformed London Bridge into a very unusual asset. It was both a road and a commercial district. The traffic across the bridge created customers. Those customers increased the value of the shops. The rents paid by the shops then helped maintain the bridge that created the traffic. A merchant might pay a bridge toll only once. A tenant occupying a shop on the bridge had to pay rent repeatedly. From the perspective of stable income, the rent could be more important than the scattered coins collected at the entrance. Why would anyone rent a shop on a bridge? Because customers could not easily avoid it. Travelers, merchants, carts, and goods entering London from the south had to pass directly in front of the shops. The shopkeeper did not need advertisements to draw people away from another street. The road itself delivered customers to the door every day. A shop on an ordinary street mainly served local residents. A shop on the bridge could sell to traveling merchants, farmers entering the city, people leaving the markets, and drivers trapped in slow traffic. The bridge administrators were not simply renting out a wooden building. They were renting access to a stream of customers that could not easily be reproduced elsewhere. Research into the houses and shops of London Bridge shows that commercial properties on the crossing could command valuable rents, which then supported maintenance. Bridge account rolls, leases, and rental records from the later 14th and 15th centuries became central evidence for understanding how this system worked. The first layer of bridge income was the toll. A merchant arriving from outside the city brought a wagon filled with goods to the entrance. The collector might charge according to the vehicle, livestock, or merchandise. The exact rates differed by town, period, and royal grant. Local residents, privileged merchants, and people holding exemptions might pay nothing. At Exeter, for example, outside carts were later charged for using the medieval bridge, while citizens of the city were exempt. The charge did not necessarily fall on every person crossing the bridge. It targeted the types of traffic and commerce that the city considered most suitable for supporting repair costs. The second layer of income came from below the bridge. London Bridge controlled not only road traffic, but also movement along the Thames. Its piers and the protective timber structures surrounding them narrowed the passages available to boats. Some vessels paid charges when passing through the arches. People who fished illegally in waters controlled by the bridge could also be fined. The bridge therefore occupied two transport systems at once. Carts passed above, boats passed below. As long as both road and river traffic continued, the bridge fund could draw income from two directions. The third layer came from rents on houses and shops. This income did not disappear simply because one cart failed to arrive. Tenants had signed leases. Even when rain reduced foot traffic for a week, the rent remained due. For the bridge administrators, rental income was easier to predict than counting small coins each day. It could support regular repairs and accumulate into a reserve for larger projects. The fourth layer came from property located away from the bridge. A donor did not need to leave a sack of coins at the bridgehead. He could give a house, field, mill, or another rent-producing asset to the bridge. The administrators could lease that property and use the rent to pay bridge expenses. Even if traffic declined in a particular year, income might continue arriving from urban houses or rural land. Over time, London's bridge fund accumulated substantial property beyond the bridge itself and became less dependent on the travelers crossing that day. The fifth layer came from gifts and religious charity. Medieval bridges were often connected to chapels, churches, and religious organizations. Supporting a bridge could be seen as a charitable act that protected travelers, strengthened public life, and benefited the donor's soul. People left money in their wills. They made offerings to bridge chapels. During the 13th century, gifts of property made to God and the bridge, charitable contributions, and bequests helped build the wealth of London's bridge fund. When all these income sources are combined, a bridge does begin to resemble a toll business. But its accounts contain another side. A stone bridge did not become costless once construction ended. The river continually struck the piers. Timber and ice carried downstream in winter hit the foundations. Wheels, hooves, and livestock wore down the roadway. Houses placed additional weight on the arches and piers. Timber buildings created a constant risk of fire. The busier the bridge became, the more money it might collect, but the faster it could also wear. The surviving accounts of Exeter's Old Bridge become extensive from 1343 onward. They show administrators employing masons, carpenters, blacksmiths, sawyers, laborers, and roofers. They purchased stone, timber, iron fittings, and bundles of brushwood used to build protective structures around the piers. These barriers reduced the impact of floating timber and winter ice. Maintenance was not an abstract expense that appeared occasionally in an account book. It consisted of people who required wages and materials that had to be transported from the yard to the river. When paving stones loosened, workers lifted and relaid them. When a timber house leaked, carpenters and roofers repaired it. When piles around a pier decayed, work moved below the waterline. Laborers might need to build temporary structures during periods of low water, move heavy timber, and drive new piles or protective materials into the riverbed. Traffic did not automatically stop because the bridge office was trying to find money. Administrators had to balance construction with continued passage. London Bridge also suffered partial collapses. Several arches were damaged in 1281. Another arch collapsed in 1437. Fire presented an additional danger because of the dense timber buildings. During the Great London Fire of 1212, flames reached the bridge district, where narrow passageways and buildings made escape especially difficult. This reveals why toll income was not pure profit. During normal years, a bridge could collect thousands of small charges and appear stable. One collapsed arch could consume the savings of many years in a matter of days. The financial result of the bridge did not depend only on how many people crossed that year. It depended on whether income accumulated faster than damage caused by stone, timber, traffic, and water. We can now follow one visiting merchant's cart through this system. This is not a reconstruction of one complete day of surviving London Bridge toll records. It is a representative transaction, showing what might happen after a coin entered the bridge fund. The cart carries wool or grain intended for sale in London. When it reaches the entrance, the merchant does not automatically receive free passage simply because the stonework had been paid for decades earlier. The roadway still has to be cleaned. Railings and buildings require repair. Protective structures around the piers need replacement. The merchant therefore pays a small toll. Compared with the value of the entire cargo, the amount may be minor, but the charge is repeated every day. Dozens of carts, hundreds of pack animals, and a continuous flow of goods entering the city transform small payments into meaningful income. Once the cart enters the bridge, it slows down. The roadway is narrow. Pedestrians and animals block the route ahead. The driver may purchase food from a shop. The merchant may stop to ask about prices. The shopkeeper receives sales revenue from these customers and then passes part of it to the bridge fund as rent. The same cart contributes to bridge income twice. First through the direct toll, then indirectly through spending that supports the shopkeeper's rent. If the cargo is stored in another property owned by the bridge institution, the fund might receive rent a third time. One roadway begins to produce several layers of income. The toll collector does not earn the full value of the cart. The bridge institution does not take the merchant's trading profit. It simply charges small amounts at a point the merchant must use. Collection was not always straightforward. Citizens of the town might possess exemptions. Some urban charters freed residents from bridge tolls, market charges, and other local dues. Outside merchants could also carry letters from the king or another city claiming immunity. The toll collector had to determine whether the document was valid. If he charged someone who was legally exempt, the mistake could create disputes between cities. If he accepted too many claims, the bridge fund lost revenue. Medieval towns kept lists of the exemptions held by other communities precisely because it was not always obvious who should pay. Travelers could also search for alternative routes. Where a ford, ferry, or another bridge existed nearby, excessive charges could push traffic elsewhere. A bridge's power to collect depended on the time and risk it saved. A ferry required a boatman and might involve waiting. During floods, it might not operate at all. A ford could trap a cart in mud, damage cargo, or become dangerous after rain. A bridge offered more dependable passage. Merchants accepted a modest toll because the crossing could still reduce the total cost of the journey. Once the charge exceeded the value of that convenience, travelers began looking for a way around it. Bridge tolls, therefore, did not permit unlimited pricing. They remained constrained by alternative methods of crossing. The authority to collect also had an expiration date. Many pontage grants lasted only several years and were intended to complete a specific project. When the period ended, administrators could not automatically continue charging. If the work remained unfinished, they had to request an extension. If the bridge suffered new damage, they had to find donors, identify local responsibility, or obtain another royal grant. The hundreds of pontage permissions issued in England between the 13th and early 15th centuries show that towns repeatedly encountered the same problem. The bridge remained in use after the legal right to collect had expired. London Bridge survived over the long term not because it possessed one simple toll that continued forever. It developed a portfolio of income. Traffic across the roadway generated tolls. Buildings on the bridge produced rents. River traffic created charges and fines. Property elsewhere produced more stable ground rents. Gifts supplemented the fund during major works or shortages. This combination prevented the bridge from depending entirely on one source. Exeter's Old Bridge developed a similar structure. Built around 1200, it originally contained 17 or 18 arches and extended for roughly 180 meters. The Church of St. Edmund stood on the bridge, together with houses and shops. Most of the surviving bridge accounts run from 1343 into the early 18th century and record repairs in considerable detail. Later evidence shows that the Exeter Bridge Fund rented approximately 15 shops on the bridge and controlled more than 50 other properties inside and outside the city, including mills and farmland. Outside carts paid to cross. Citizens were exempt. Bridge income, therefore, did not come only from charging every traveler. Shop rents, mill income, land rents, and tolls on outside traffic all contributed to maintenance. Even when cart traffic declined for a week, rents from fields and buildings could continue. Multiple income sources did not mean that the money could be treated as unrestricted wealth. We can construct a representative annual model for a large English urban bridge during the late 14th century. This is not a complete surviving statement from London, Exeter, or any other individual bridge. Actual income varied according to location, legal privileges, traffic, property ownership, and repair requirements. The model assumes an ordinary annual income of £100 only to show how money might be divided. Suppose £30 come from tolls on road and river traffic. £35 come from rents on bridge houses and shop. £25 come from houses, fields, mills, and donated property located elsewhere. The remaining £10 come from fines, gifts, temporary contributions, and arrears from earlier years. Once £100 enter the bridge office, they cannot all be considered operating profit. Collectors, clerks, and administrators require payment or working expenses. The roadway needs daily cleaning, Carpenters, masons, and blacksmiths perform minor repairs. Timber, stone, ironwork, and transport require cash. When buildings leak, tenants may demand repairs or refuse to pay the full rent. The bridge fund must also preserve a reserve because no one knows which pier the next winter flood will damage. In a strong year, market activity increases and more carts and animals enter the city. Every bridge shop is occupied. Properties elsewhere pay their rents on time. Suppose total income reaches £110. There is no major flood, and normal maintenance consumes only £45. The bridge fund retains £65. That money is not the private profit of the administrators. It remains in the fund to replace piles. From the outside, the bridge appears to be collecting small tolls. Inside the accounts, the importance of the strong year lies in building a reserve. In an ordinary year, total income falls to £95. Some visiting merchants possess exemptions. Several bridge shops are vacant. One pier needs reinforcement, and a house requires a new roof. Maintenance and administration consume £60. £35 remain. The bridge is still financially sustainable, but the surplus is far smaller than the volume of traffic might suggest. Thousands of travelers can use a bridge during a year without every payment becoming wealth. Most of the income merely keeps the structure capable of collecting again. In a weak year, the bridge business faces the most damaging combination. A flood or moving ice damages a pier. Part of the roadway is closed. Traffic falls, reducing toll income. Bridge shops suffer from construction disruption, and tenants demand rent reductions. Property elsewhere still produces something, but annual income may fall to slightly more than £70. Emergency construction requires £130. The bridge fund faces a deficit of more than £50. It must draw upon reserves from previous years. It may seek donations from wealthy citizens. It may sell or mortgage property. It may request a new royal pontage grant, or it may arrange temporary ferry service while repairs restore a minimum level of passage. This explains why a bridge fund could produce surpluses for many years and still enter a sudden financial crisis. A bridge combined low daily wear with the possibility of extremely large sudden losses. One loose stone was not the problem. The collapse of an entire arch changed every number in the account. If the bridge depended entirely on daily tolls, closure caused the income to stop at exactly the moment the greatest amount of repair money was needed. This differed from an inn or market stall. When one room in an inn was damaged, the remaining rooms could still operate. When one critical bridge arch failed, the entire route might become unusable. The asset could no longer serve customers and therefore could no longer collect money from them. Bridge administrators had to build reserves before the bridge broke. This problem appeared particularly clearly at Rochester. During the winter of 1381, the River Medway froze. When the ice began moving again, large blocks struck the old bridge and caused it to collapse. Sir John de Cobham and Sir Robert Knowles then financed the construction of a new stone bridge. In 1399, they petitioned King Richard II to establish a permanent organization to manage it. They also encouraged friends to donate land and money so that the bridge would possess long-term sources of income. The Rochester solution shows that medieval administrators eventually understood that tolls alone were unreliable. When the bridge closed, toll revenue disappeared. Land and houses could continue producing rent. The Rochester Bridge Fund therefore acquired farms and other property. Tenants worked the land and paid rents. The administrators used that income to repair the bridge. The people who crossed the bridge and the people who financially supported it no longer had to be the same group. Centuries later, the Rochester Bridge Trust still maintains crossings through property and investment income rather than charging users a toll. From a commercial perspective, this was an important transformation. The earliest bridge model charged the traveler today for today's passage. The more mature model gave the bridge institution a portfolio of long-term assets whose rents financed public access. The bridge gradually changed from a toll facility into a property-owning fund. Its most stable income no longer came from each cart on the roadway. It came from houses and farmland whose tenants paid rent each year. This also changed who earned money from the bridge. The toll collector received wages. Masons, carpenters, and blacksmiths earned money from repairs. Shopkeepers on the bridge profited from passing customers. The bridge institution collected rents, tolls, and donations. The city benefited from more reliable traffic, taxation, and expanding markets. Nearby landowners could also gain as improved roads raised the value of their property. These benefits did not all enter the same money box. The penny collected at the entrance was only the most visible fragment of the bridge's total economic value. Merchants accepted the charge because the bridge lowered transport costs. Without it, a trader might need to wait for a ferry. He might pay a boatman. He might have to divide the cargo into several loads. He might face capsizing, water damage, or delay. With a bridge, one cart could cross continuously. Even after paying a toll, the entire journey might remain cheaper. The charge, therefore, did not simply remove money from the merchant. It converted part of the time and risk saved by the crossing into maintenance income. The crucial question was who controlled the money. When toll revenue was strictly used to support the bridge, it allowed users to share the cost of infrastructure. When a lord collected increasing charges without accepting responsibility for repair, the toll became an extraction from trade. Medieval towns and merchants repeatedly fought for exemptions because a long journey could pass through numerous bridges, gates, markets, and lordships. Each charge might be small. Together, they could remove a significant part of the trader's profit. A merchant whose town charter freed him from bridge and market tolls did not merely hold an honorary privilege, he lowered the cost of every journey and gained an advantage over competitors who still had to pay. Bridge tolls could also reshape the road itself. When a bridge was safe, reliable, and reasonably priced, traffic concentrated around it. Inns, blacksmiths, markets, and warehouses appeared near the approaches. Land rents increased. The town might expand toward the crossing. The bridge ceased to be only a collection of stones over water. It began to determine where commerce would pass. The person or institution controlling the bridge also controlled part of the entrance to the market. The most capable bridge administrators, however, did not rely on tolls alone. Toll income had obvious weaknesses. Traffic could decline because of war, harvest failure, plague, weaker markets, or road damage. The legal grant could expire. Local people might be exempt. Merchants could choose another route. Collectors might hide some of the money they received. By comparison, shops on the bridge and property elsewhere produced more predictable contractual income. The bridge fund needed to keep tenants and renegotiate leases as they expired. This was the pattern eventually visible at London, Exeter, and Rochester. The most visible income was the toll. The most stable income was often rent. The greatest financial risk was the bridge itself. Coins entered the bridgehead money box every day. The wooden piles slowly decaying beneath the arches were far harder to see. When administrators watched the cash box but ignored the underwater structure, their apparent profit was only a repair bill that had not yet arrived. So why was a medieval bridge a toll business? Because it controlled a natural transport bottleneck. The river broke the road. The bridge joined it again. Merchants, carts, livestock, and boats accepted small charges in exchange for saving time and reducing risk. Thousands of minor payments, combined with shop rents, property income, fines, and donations, could create a continuing bridge fund. But a bridge was not a costless barrier collecting money from travelers. It was an expensive structure constantly damaged by water, ice, wheels, fire, and its own weight. The authority to charge usually required legal permission. The income was often restricted to construction and maintenance. Bridges that survived over the long term rarely depended only on the toll box at the entrance. They converted temporary traffic into permanent assets. They used the penny left by a cart to purchase property. They used property rents to repair an arch. They used the safer bridge to attract more travelers and shops. When the wool cart finally reaches the other side, the driver may already have forgotten the small coin he paid. To him, it was simply part of the cost of entering London. The bridge administrator sees a much longer cycle. Today's toll pays for tomorrow's timber. Rent from a bridge shop pays the next mason's wages. Income from a distant field may rebuild an arch destroyed by a flood. On the surface, the bridge sells one journey across the river. What it truly manages is the ability to ensure that the road still exists when the next traveler arrives.